Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40, the First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and I'm joined by Zoom on the panel today with Ms. Linda Schultz and Mr. Richard Whitbread. Present here from the assessment department is Jeremy Pohl, and the administrative personnel is Ms. Fran Picoto. We will be hearing applications for revision of the business assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all of the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 9 on our docket today. Ms. Picoto, will you please affirm both the assessor's and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Jeremy Wright.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Preliminary issue that we'll deal with first is the Assessment and Taxation Department having filed late evidence with respect to annual rental value calculations for items 3 and 4 on the docket. I'm suggesting that we go in camera to discuss whether this evidence will be accepted in the printed format that is on the OneDrive, and whether it can be printed out or whether it will be printed out for Mr. Smith. I believe that is going to take a minute or two. So if we can go in camera now to discuss the admissibility or the acceptance of that evidence. Thank you. Thank you for that. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. With respect to the late evidence, we will be accepting it and we will refer to it. It has been distributed on the SharePoint drive, and I believe printed copies have now been provided to Mr. Smith. If you need extra time to review it before we get to those, we'll have a recess. One other preliminary matter that I've had a brief discussion with the other members on the panel is the striking similarity of all of these matters on the docket today. They're all with respect, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Smith or Mr. Pohl, the issue is one of the annual rental value on all of these properties, all of which are located in a geographically similar area, the Birchwood Auto Park. So keeping that in mind, if there is a way to emphasize certain parts and then have that evidence applied, I don't need to cut anybody off, but given the similarity of the briefs file as well, if we can, there's 9 matters on the list. So
yeah, generally speaking, this is a BCD or car dealership auto mall. We've had this argument already heard for this cycle for the realty. I've included the orders, the similarity in briefs and similarity in treatment of the property. From some of the property, subject property should be the same. So I think we should review one and then have those arguments carried forward to the others. Generally speaking, I've simplified this breakdown from the realty. We do have a decision from the realty, so I'll touch base on that. And then I'll just go straight to the comps as they are the exact same comps that we used for the realty side of things. So with that, I think it's probably best to handle it for speed and to expedite the hearing.
And Mr. Smith, is that procedure acceptable?
I am in agreement, yes.
Okay, and if there is something additional that needs to be referred to with respect to one of the or more of the properties, please feel free.
Absolutely.
That having been said, as a preliminary matter, if we can proceed to number 1 on the list, that's street address unit 10 at 3965 Portage Avenue. Mr. Pohl, if you can please introduce the property and lead us through your evidence.
File number is 244984. The business address is 103965 Portage Avenue. The business assessment ID number is, or roll number is 50692. This is a Volvo Cars. It's the business name. We have an annual rental value or ARV of 277,440. The total ARV or total area of the premise is 17,111 square feet. And the overall ARV per square foot is $16.21. Occupancy costs are below our standard. We see that the base rent is $13.67. And just so we're clear for the entire roll or for the entire docket, I should say today, they are all owner occupied. So whether you see different business names or such, they're all owner occupied. There are no rents in place. To simplify the argument for 30 seconds and second synopsis of our argument. And I appreciate we have an educated panel here today. We've heard these arguments prior, so we don't go as deep as I usually do. We use a retail format argument. We look for big box stores for rents that if these owners were to look for similar properties that are developed to the subject in retail locations, near retail locations, what would be the rent that owners would be expecting to charge for tenancies? And we take that rent, we transpose it back here to the subject property. So all that rent analysis and a little bit later in the brief, it is the same for everyone that we go through here today. So from that, we'll get into the actual order for the realty. On the next page, it was between myself and Trevor. The order was reduction, and I have them all highlighted for convenience for the panel. The decision was based on the evidence of the applicant with the non-recoverable allowance of 3%. So essentially, the argument that the developer presented was the one that was adopted by the board for realty. We don't agree with it, just clear to the panel. We've appealed all of these properties to the municipal board for the realty. But I am gonna basically go through the same argument again, and I'll let the board make its decision on what they feel. So next page is the cover page for the realty brief, just showing that it is indeed this subject property for the VA. Location, it's on the corner. We are not doing the Thames. If you look, this is one of the only properties of the cluster of properties that we're dealing with today. There's a property fence line between the two. They actually have a Tim Hortons. That's not what we're dealing with here today. We're just dealing with a car dealership on the north side of the fence line. And there's another aerial photo underneath that. So when we go through the comparables, these are the exact same comparables that are presented in the realty hearing. I've broken out the comparables for different areas of the city. I've looked at it from 6 areas of the city where car dealerships are located. And I'm also looking at it also overall, look at the cities as well. So we can see we have a number of comparables. The comparables that I'll be looking at for subject property here are comparables 73 to 80. They are nearest to the subject property, about 1.5 kilometers away, a little over 1 kilometer away. You see that they range for an area of approximately 182,000 square feet of leased up area. We have an average weight of $17.78, a weighted average of $17.08, and a median of $17.38. So it's a very tight average, very good indicator of if this property owner didn't want to own the property, wanted to rent in a location near the subject property, you would go into the marketplace and you would see that every other property owner develops their property and expects a rate of return on that, and that rate of return are the rents that you see here. So in the $17 or so that we have applied, I should say that we can see from the market, we can go into what was applied to the subject property, and that is up on page, again, referring back to page one of the brief, we have $13.67. So we're about $3 or so, a little over $3 under what market is. And with that, I think a $13.67 rent is reasonable for this assessment cycle, for this BA cycle. So with that, I'm recommending that be confirmed, and I'll hope for it.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to, and again, following on from your suggestion at the start, this is, all of my questions are intended to carry forward for all the properties. So the brief that is presented here, the rental comparables that are included, those are identical to the rent comparables that were included in the realty brief that was decided.
Yes, so for all of the properties that you'll see today, that is exactly the case.
Okay. And in looking at the rent comparables, as you had mentioned, they're in 6 kind of individual locations. Each of those is for the most part a big box power center node, correct?
Right.
So the first bunch would be Regent and Lagimodiere Power Center node.
Yes,
And so the comps there would be on either Kildonan Place Shopping Center, Crossroads Station Shopping Center, or Kildonan Crossing Shopping Center, correct?
near, yes,
Okay.
near,
The second bunch is all immediately either on or immediately adjacent to the Polo Park Shopping Center, correct?
correct,
So that again would be St. James Station, Polo Park Shopping Center, Polo Festival, etc.
yes,
Okay. Again, we're just doing this once, so I'm trying to speed through it here. Southwest Winnipeg is a little bit more spread out, but we're looking dominantly at Grant Park Shopping Center and Pembina Crossing, correct?
right,
The third bunch, 42 to 60, would be 2 locations essentially, Keniston and McGilvery interchange power center node, correct?
correct,
And then the second bunch is dominantly in the IKEA Seasons of Tuxedo development, correct?
yes,
So again, we're looking at smart centers, Winnipeg Southwest, smart centers, Keniston Common. Being well, and the other power center developments are in those 2 locations.
yes,
Okay. And sorry, just jumping on. The 5th one, 61 to 72, McPhillips and Leela interchange. So we're looking at the power center developments there essentially.
yes,
Garden City Shopping Center, Garden City Square, for the most part.
and
Right.
north, and Northfield,
Or in Northgate with 2 of them, I think.
Okay.
Okay, and then finally, the last bunch, 73 to 80, we're looking at the former Unicity development site on West Portage, correct?
correct, and there's 2 other comparables that are well, maybe a kilometer down.
Correct, yeah, 2 adjacent ones, yes. So, but dominantly, we're looking at the Smart Centers Winnipeg West site. Okay, and for each of those developments, are they anchored by? They're typically anchored by a larger anchor, such as Walmart, Superstore, Home Depot, Co-op Shopping Center, Safeway, things of that nature,
Sometimes
correct?
typically,
Sometimes three of them.
typically, but there are some individual ones and roll numbers that aren't. I'm looking at
I would agree.
size in locations on the
Correct. So I would acknowledge there are some outliers certainly, but dominantly we're looking at comps that are on anchored centers, correct? Okay. And in any of these comparables, are any of them automotive related?
No,
And there's no auto dealers.
no, there aren't any. I've looked at the marketplace, every now and again, you see a rent being reported. I think there's been 3 that I've looked at in years. Maybe a little bit more than that have been purchase agreements where the franchise is purchased and then within a certain amount of time, there is a purchase agreement that the franchise can act on to buy the realty property. Those rents are usually reported, but again, that's part of a purchase agreement. So if there's no real standalone long-term lease that you could rely on because there just doesn't exist.
Right, okay, sorry, I see where you're going with that. My question was slightly different in that there are no automotive dealerships or service repair on any of these sites, correct?
No.
Okay.
That's your asking.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear to.
No, I thought you
start
had
with.
it. No, there is none on these 7, there are no non-rents, so there aren't any.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Schultz, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. So out of all these comparables, like you said, you had indicated there was no auto dealerships. Was there a reason why, like I'm thinking, when you go down Regent, you've got a big, section of Regent Avenue that is dealerships and that you wouldn't have selected something like that?
They're all owner occupied. All of, like every single car dealership, full service franchise.
Yeah.
Are all occupied in the city. There are none that rent.
Okay,
Like I was
okay.
indicating, every now and again,
Right.
I'll catch on an I&E that someone's reporting a rent. And the 3 times that I've looked at it in the last 10 years or so have been a purchase agreement where it is not independent. It's not a 10 or 15-year lease. Where
Okay.
you can put any weight to, it's a purchase agreement. And
Okay.
essentially, this is why we're using our big box argument, because it is the nearest kind of comparable steel walls or masonry walls, slab on grade construction, steel roof, loading dock has to be in a retail environment with if you're looking from these comparables, you have parking up front and around the back, and you have ample parking for your patrons. You'd also be able to use that for your storage of cars, vehicles, or so to speak, on site if you're a car dealership. This is the nearest orange to the apple that we're comparing.
Okay.
Good.
And out of
But
all
there-
these comparables, which one would you say would be the closest to what you would be looking at comparing to these?
Well, that's why I pointed out for this particular group of properties, being that it is on the west end of Portage, it would be 73 to 80. But
Okay,
what I tried to do was look at the citywide as a whole, because this is the concept we're using for any car dealership under appeal. So you have the full look of the city, then you can go to the region that the city's located in, or that subject property is located in the city. And you can have your full look at the marketplace that we're using. Clearly, if you're looking at a Garden City area car dealership, it's gonna be set on a retail argument at a different rate than you would say the Kennison Common area, right?
for sure.
So we're looking at it not just from citywide, but also from a geographical location where they're located in.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Whitbread. Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm just looking through your comparables, and let's use that 73 to 80 grouping just for an example, because it runs through the other comps. But I noticed that you have a lease start date that is expired. I'm going to use number 79, for example. you've got at least a term start of 11/1/2017 for 5 years. So that expired in 2022. Is that correct?
That would be approximately, yes.
Yes. And the one after it would be 2019, expire in 2024. And I noticed that all throughout your comps. So these are dated rents that you're providing us. Is that correct?
Yeah, these are the bit like, I'll get into a bit further here. If you look at it from an office perspective, this is an office property, obviously. There is a slew of property, there's a slew of rents in place for office. And the transient nature of office is you have a number of rents coming up to reference date at any given point in time. For retail, it is not the same. Retail typically, you stay as a tenant for long term and they're longer term leases. And there's less of them. The frequency for changeover to bring into a reference date is less. There's less of a pool to draw from. So this is the best market evidence that we have. And I'm also putting that into aspect as far as the size of the subject properties. We have a limited stock of properties to look at, so. Like citywide, there's about 80 comparables that I could bring in. As far as the lease aspect goes. We're bringing in what they're paying at approaching the reference date. So if the lease was signed a 15-year deal, and this is how it's kind of shown where in on parable 73 to 78. They're just showing the rent that's being put in place. They're not showing our terms. So as I go through the years, we see that they do change, and I catch the change of rates. I'm bringing in the rents that are at the referencing what they're showing. Other property owners indicate where the lease starts, their terms, their step ups. We're only as good as the information that they present to us and how they present to us on the NIE. So this is the best evidence that I can provide to the panel today.
Okay. Now, the other day I heard Mr. Smith provide a presentation about the conundrum we've got between the city and the applicants working on companies like the ones we're faced with today, auto dealerships. And I understand there's a case before the board on your behalf, looking at big box retailers, and another on behalf of the applicants looking at automotive businesses. Now, if you're not able to address it, Mr. Smith may be able to come back to it when he gives evidence after, but can you comment on that case law going forward? Is
Sure,
this its distinction in existence, and do we expect a result?
Sure, I didn't provide it today. It is in the realty brief. Me and Mr. Smith were both participating in the car dealership or BCD test case that's coming up in June. Generally speaking, there have been 2 municipal board orders that we've been pulling from. One indicates that retail, national or international bigger type chains in or near, and again, in or near retail locations is where we should be, or how they value property, how they value the car dealership. Another example is Mr. Smith's position on another order. And again, both these orders are 20 years old, and they've been the most recent. Whereas it used not that argument, it used generally speaking, it used some book rents, I believe. And his argument is on that. None of those orders were indicated in the orders to be used as a directive long-term carry forward. But those are the best orders directed that we can use, because nothing else has been brought to the board since. So when we go into the test case, so to speak, we're going to be presenting a fresh look, each of us, towards what our opinions are. Myself, I'll be referencing the 2 orders, what we feel it should be, and then moving forward. My argument is going to be that it's going to be a retail argument, a retail set of parameters I'll be putting on it. But again, we're not at the hearing yet. We haven't completed the hearing yet or got an order from it yet. So at this point, we just know that there is a backlog of some 300-ish appeals waiting on an order for for this particular test case, which is, the first one up is a condominium. Like we're dealing with today, if we can get all the answers we need from that order, great. If not, we may need to go to a second test case, which is a standalone retail, like not in a condominium. And then if necessary, a third case, which would be a more industrial flavored or periphery type property for those. We can get all our information we need from one order, from one hearing, but needs to see.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I direct a question to Mr. Smith? It's on this point.
Okay, that's fine. Now, we're gonna get it all out on the first one anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah, right.
let's hear it
No
now.
objections from me.
No, that's fine. Let's hear it now.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Smith, would you agree with the characterization that Mr. Pohl has made?
Largely with the exception of I think Mr. Pohl had referenced that I was relying on the second decision, which was based on automotive dealership rents, some of which were book rents, some of which were not. That's not accurate. And I'm not knocking you. What I'm saying is that, and you were in the previous hearing there, Mr. Whitbread, what I was explaining is that there's a discrepancy in the orders as to the best methodology and how to evaluate car dealerships for valuation. The first one relying exclusively, although they didn't call them big boxes, but on big box retail as your pool of properties from which to pull rents and cap rates and vacancies, etc. The other 1 year later decision was based on automotive dealership rents, and we can't all go back in time to 2004 and look at the 2001 or 2000 information that it was relying on, but it was, there were some book rents in there, there were some arm's length leases in there because it was a different time frame than we're dealing with now. Things have evolved since then, but the overarching characterization that we have two different board orders that don't agree with each other, I do agree with, and it's essentially saying we need to look again at how these properties are valued and determine the most appropriate methodology in valuing them.
Thank you both. I understood that the other day, but I did want to hear confirmation from Mr. Pohl because he was not in that hearing at the time. I thank you both. This should help us. You understand the conundrum we're faced with as a board today.
Yeah.
This should help us understand more clearly what our conundrum is and what our challenges are. But it should help us speed up the presentations from both of you this morning as well, if we have this understanding that this dichotomy exists. I have no other questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up on the test cases coming up, 1, 2, or 3, however many it is there an agreement between all the parties that the decision from the municipal board will not only impact, but will be accepted as a valuation tool for both the applicants and the city assessment taxation?
I can't speak for every agency, for every property owner. I can see from where we're positioning is we're looking at that order to apply it, and it's going to be used as a directive to go back into case management with, to negotiate with.
Okay.
So that's the essentialness of what it's supposed to do.
Well, fair enough. That's
Whether it gets adopted by every agent or, you know, I can't speak.
worst case scenario will be instructive. Did you have anything to add with respect to the not necessarily binding nature, but the instructive nature of the potential orders?
Yes, so well, not really to add, but more to agree largely. The intent is for the order to provide guidance, as Mr. Pohl says, with the outstanding orders, provided that the order is clear and covers all of the bases, etc. But again, there are 2 other potential test cases for slightly different varieties of auto dealers, but there is no formal agreement in place, but the intent is for it to provide that guidance.
Fair enough. Getting back to the property individually that we're discussing today and the comps that you used, Mr. Pohl, between number 73 and 80, all of those comps and looking 73 to 78, is that the old Unicity? 3647?
From 73 to 78, yes.
Okay. And 79 and 80 are
Just
Westwards?
another property that is about a,
Cavalier Road, something like that?
yeah, it's about a down there.
All of those properties are the power center or the known power centers that have been discussed. All of those properties as well are east of the perimeter highway. Is that right?
All the subject properties are
All the subject
west.
properties, but
and
all these
of
comps
the-
are
yes.
east.
If you look at Unicity, former Unicity, you're about 1.2-ish kilometers away, so they are like the nearest to the subject property.
So the comps that you are comparable properties that you have listed at 73 to 80 in the power center are walking distance from residential areas.
Okay.
Okay. Is the subject property or subject properties walking distance from residential areas?
I would say typically, no, I don't see patrons who are living in the area walking across the Cloverleaf to get there. There's no sidewalks really set up to get there. The subject property is the auto mall is flat, I guess you would say. It is a mall set up to sell cars and service cars, but it is in a spot that is the edge of the Cloverleaf. That's the only one.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Now the rents that have been used for the city's calculation and assessment taxation department calculation for the annual rental value, those are model driven?
Get there.
Okay. You may not be able to answer this, and that's fair enough. The decisions made by the Board of Revision that have been included with all of the properties, was that amount of rent determined put into the model for modeling purposes for determination of the rents for these properties?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
What you're asking me is what the appellant asked for.
About the Board of Revision.
No, these were already done, this assessment.
Oh, they were done prior to that. Okay, that was gonna be my next question about the ordering of all these, but that's great. I don't have anything else. Mr. Smith, please, your evidence.
Before we go on,
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Whitford,
may I just redirect a question to Mr.
please.
Poole? While there is no ready access to residential properties to the east of this mall, would you agree that there are a number of hundreds of residential properties being built up as we speak to the west of this?
Yes. Just so we're clear, that whole area was scheduled for development. It's been all carved out with individual roll numbers and planning, and it's starting to come to life, so to speak. But I believe it's a mix of apartments, and so to speak. There's also hotels, I believe, but I don't believe there's any residential single family dwellings of sorts in that mix. But yes, it is starting.
But you would agree by its characterization, an apartment block is a residential complex.
Yeah, no, definitely. What I'm saying is, it's starting to come it's starting to be developed, and it's not on a long term, it is literally coming to life.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thanks. Mr. Smith, your evidence, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will, just as that came up, that particular question with regard to the area and the development surrounding it. So, and this has happened in other hearings on other properties that I've dealt with over time. I just want to be clear that we're dealing with the valuation as of April 1, 2023. So any development that occurs after that time frame, which for the most part is the development that you're referring to in the area to the west of the Birchwood Auto Park, while there was some limited development that had happened prior to that valuation date. Most of the development that you're referring to has happened after that. And of course, with our Manitoba assessment system and the legislation for that, anything that occurs after that valuation date gets taken into account in the next valuation cycle. So in the next valuation cycle, which would be based on April 1, 2025, those apartments and any other development out there would be taken into account for that particular cycle. I'll touch on the area briefly in my presentation, but I just wanted to I guess emphasize that particular point when we were going through it because it had just come up. I will, I guess, cover off a couple of points to start with that are overarching for all the properties. As Mr. Cole mentioned, we did appeal the realty assessments on all of the auto dealers in the Birchwood Auto Park. For this cycle, they were all decided based on the net operating income and rental rate applied by the appellant, being myself, on behalf of the ownership, with a changed, an altered capitalization rate as well. We have included in the addenda of our brief the income expense for each property, but also that board of revision order that refers to the decision being based on evidence presented by the applicant, with as well as, sorry. And then we've presented the actual brief pages indicating the valuation that was presented for the realty. We haven't changed our rental rates or any of our approach between then and now. All of our information remains the same with regard to the property, with regard to the influences on it, how to develop the model, and the actual individual rental rate comparables are identical as well. This also holds true for the city of Winnipeg evidence. Each of their briefs includes the same 80 comparables that were presented for the realty appeal. So we're dealing with identical information then to now in terms of what we're looking at. So that is the background. The issue of how to value these properties has already come up slightly. So to paraphrase, there was a 2003 decision at the municipal board based on using essentially big box store rental rates to apply to automotive dealerships. They didn't call them big box, but that was essentially what they were dealing with, looking at grocery stores and things of that nature back in that time frame. That was 2003. The following decision, the next year, was based on automotive rents, as Mr. Cole related. There were some book rents there. There were some true arm's length rents there, but we're also going back 20 years in time. So we have that dichotomy of what is the best methodology to value these? The city has proceeded with valuing them based on the initial decision in 2003, looking at big box rents, saying that it's the most comparable apple to this orange, applying a retail rent taken from those big box stores to the entire property. What we have done, which we believe is significantly more appropriate, is look at the property as it stands and look at the use of the property, the structure of the property, and we have determined that there are essentially two components to these properties. I will get you to flip forward to my page number 16 quickly, where I identify this. If you look at the central paragraph there, you can see that we're looking at two components to these automotive dealerships. You have essentially the first component being retail showroom. That's your front of the structure, where the cars are displayed, where they have, lounges for the clientele. They have supportive office in terms of finance and administration, etc. But that is the front portion of the building. Sometimes, and many times, there's some mezzanine office area that is included in that front showroom retail area. But dominantly, you're looking at display space for the product itself. Behind that, at the rear of the structure, typically you have your automotive service retail, and this nearly exclusively is the way that these structures are built. You have generally a wall that divides the front from the back. They don't blend into each other. Typically, you generally have a wall with a clear separation. So you walk into the back area and it's significantly different than from the front. Sometimes it's built separately as well. But when you walk into the back, you go from having a retail showroom type of finish and structure to having more of an industrial structure, but an automotive service facility. So concrete floors, drainage, bare walls, no finish. Essentially, you're looking at truly automotive service. You have some overhead doors, all the things that go into automotive service. So there's a very clear separation between the front and the back in these buildings. And in looking at valuing them, the city and ourselves as appellants have the exact same problem. As Mr. Cole mentioned, there are no first line branded auto dealerships that are not owner occupied. So there are no leases out there on the marketplace for full service auto dealerships that can be considered independent and market rents. They're all owner occupied. Any rent that is in there is book rent, which of course cannot be relied upon for determining market value according to both appraisal and assessment theory. So how do you value that property then? Well, you look at the two components of the property. You look at the retail showroom separately from the automotive service repair. You determine a rent for or rather appropriate comparables for the front, and you determine appropriate comparables for the back. So you have your retail portion and you have your automotive service repair portion. Now, I'll be clear, the automotive service repair portion, the rents for these properties do come from retail locations as well. You're looking at properties that are located on your main thoroughfares, as that's where the clientele typically traverse in their, going from home to work or wherever. So they want to locate on major thoroughfares as well. So they're not in industrial parks or anything of that nature. So we look at the two components for the retail part. Yes, we look for comparables that are retail in nature, most of them big box in nature, but the distinction between what the city applies and what we apply is very significant. So the city is looking at big box retail developments that are typically nearly exclusively, as you can see from the comps provided, cited on big box power center nodes. So you're looking at, as I mentioned, the Crossroads Shopping Center or Crossroads Station Shopping Center at the corner of Regent and Lagimodier is kind of a typical one. You have both Walmart, Canadian Superstore, and Home Depot as the main anchors for that site. Now, when these sites get developed, the developers look at bringing in these main anchors to start with. They rely on getting those anchors in order to drive their development. So they get your Walmarts, your Home Depots, your superstores, tenants of that ilk and size, because those stores will draw in the vast majority of customers. Everybody needs to go to those locations on a relatively frequent basis. And that then drives the interest in the site from all of the other national branded big box retailers. They want to locate on that site because people need to go there. And so the other big box retail tenants will be drawn to that site, and they'll be willing to pay a greater rent to locate on that site because they know that they will drive greater business for their particular business by locating on that big box anchored site. Now, that is different from the locations of the automotive dealerships, and certainly very different from what a retailer would pay to locate in the location of where these auto dealerships are. Now, we'll get to location for the subject properties in a bit, but the distinction is that the rents drawn from big box retail sites that are power center anchors are going to be considerably different from big box retail tenancies that are in closer proximity typically to where auto dealers are. You will notice that there are no auto dealers and or typically service repair places located on any of these big box developments that the city has referred to. There's a number of reasons for that. A, they won't pay the rent to locate in those locations. And the developers of those centers don't want auto dealers to be located on their centers either, because it's a very different kind of retail that is not going to be it's not going to drive greater business for the group as a whole. So it's not a tenancy that they are looking for. So that is how we have approached the valuation. That's how it was done for the realty in this. That's how we've done it for all of our auto dealers. The retail tenants that we look for are, yes, for the most part, big box, but they're located in locations that are more comparable to where the auto dealers are located, or in peripheral areas, we'll say, that are more akin to where the auto dealers are located. So they may be on Regent, but they're further down the road on Regent, either across from where the auto dealers are or much closer in proximity and not right out front of the main anchors. So that's kind of the overarching view. I'll try and run through the rest of it quickly here. I am conscious of our time, so we'll try and keep this as concise as possible. Page number 3 of my brief gives you some background on the property of the 2025 ARV. See the realty decision. We've included the decision in the back. Again, it was based on our presentation with one small wrinkle regarding the non-recoverable allowance. We have zoning for you there. This particular property built in 2002. We haven't been able to determine, unfortunately, a land to plan area ratio for this particular property, as it is demised essentially along a fence line with Tim Hortons taking up a significant portion of the site and the auto dealer taking up the remainder of the portion of the site. Suffice it to say, the land area is relatively small for an auto dealer, and they have a situation where they don't have enough display space for their product on site, or for storage of vehicles that need to be repaired, or indeed workers or clientele vehicles. We can jump through the photos here relatively quickly. I won't run through all the photos for all the property, but let's look at one. the exterior here, page number 4, of the property. Then we get into the showroom retail. Clearly, you can see that's showroom retail, some mezzanine office area above. And then I believe they've included the lounge for the clientele, and then you get into the service and repair area at the back. Very clear distinction between front and back of the property. Moving on, page 7, there's a breakdown of the physical structure of the property, which goes on through page number 8. It's there for you to review if you wish. And we can jump forward to the bottom of page number 8. I will only touch on this ever so briefly. In the Point West Auto Park, Birchwood Auto Park now, it is set up as a condominium corporation, and upon development of the property, the city required through a development agreement that the developer, which is essentially Birchwood, Point West, take on the responsibility of putting in all of the infrastructure for the auto park themselves. So they paid for the installation of all of the infrastructure. So that's your drainage, your roadways, your lighting, all of the typical infrastructure components that you would have in any standard location within the city. So they paid for it up front. And the agreement is such that the condominium corporation and the individual units are responsible for paying for the annual maintenance of that infrastructure. So your snow clearing, things of that nature, light bulb replacement, whatnot, as well as the long-term replacement of that infrastructure. So when the roadway needs to be fully repaved, or when the drainage needs to be reworked, et cetera, the condominium corporation is required to pay for all of that. Now, that is different from any standard location in the city. If you're located on St. Mary's Road or Main Street or Regent Avenue, your responsibilities end at your the edge of your property. You don't pay to have Portage Avenue cleared in the summertime or salted in the winter, etc. You don't pay directly to replace that roadway, all of those things. So these are additional costs that the individual condominiums and the condominium corporation bear that you wouldn't have in another location. This is identical to at least two other situations in the city, both developed by Caricon, and they're treated somewhat differently. In the Point West Auto Park, this infrastructure component was always included by the city in the valuation for the properties based on that 2003 municipal board decision. Subsequently, in the last 3 cycles, I believe it is, Mr. Poole, that has been removed from the city's valuation, and they are not addressing that particular part. We, of course, are saying that that should be included, and of course, it impacts what rent a standard market tenant would pay to locate on those sites. If you have additional costs to an identical location, well, you'd be willing to pay less in rent in order to locate there, all other things being equal. Moving on, zoning in the auto park. So it's zone C3. However, there's a zoning agreement which strictly limits it to automotive use, so either sales and or repair in the auto park, as you can see on my page number 9. So while we do need to use retail comparables in order to determine rent for a portion of the property, those tenants could not locate in this particular location for that particular reason, as well as others. Moving on, site is shown on page number 10. It is essentially the corner site, this particular one, of Racetrack Road and Portage Avenue, and the property, as already mentioned, is located on the periphery of the city. So on page 12, you can see the location. Going down Portage Avenue to the west, you pass under Trans-Canada Highway, the perimeter. And on the northwest corner, there is where Point West Auto Park is located. For the most part, you are looking at very limited development in the area as far as supportive development. And this still holds true to today's date if we were to be looking at that, which we're not. Where you're looking at Assiniboia Downs, you have the MTS Iceplex, Red River Exhibition Grounds, and then there's some frontage development along Portage Avenue. If we go back in time, there's a little bit of industrial that has been developed to the west, but by and large, you're looking at a location that is on the very edge of the city without surrounding supportive, fully developed residential areas that would drive traffic as far as a retail location goes. Let's jump forward. Again, I will try and keep this brief. Automotive industry, I won't touch on that to any great extent other than to say that there is less demand for bricks and mortar locations. There's been a lot of consolidation in the industry. You're looking at a different way of shopping now. People shop online for their vehicles as well. They identify their options, they look at all of the details, select the type of model they want, and then they go to the actual site itself to see the car and try it out and essentially pick it up. So there's a lot less need for the bricks and mortar. So you see a lot less dealerships out there. Please disregard the last sentence of that paragraph on page 13, the middle one, that's dated and shouldn't have been copied over. COVID-19 had an impact, obviously, which we won't delve into to any great extent. Page 14. Now, this is relevant, and again, I'll treat it very quickly. Auto dealership properties are considered special use facilities, special use properties by the appraisal community. If we look at my top paragraph there, an article from the Appraisal Journal, the peculiarities of appraising auto dealership facilities. So what it states is auto dealership facilities are considered special use or special purpose properties, which means that they cannot typically be assigned other uses. The next sentence essentially mimics that. What they're saying is that you don't get retailers, pardon me, you don't get retailers moving from their big box store and moving into automotive dealership facilities. It just doesn't happen. The structure of the building, the location, etc., is not suitable to them, and they would not entertain that idea. So while we do need to look at retail for a portion of these properties, it should be kept in mind that it's really not that any of these tenants would look at these properties as a potential option for them to move into. And that, of course, has an impact on what rent one should assign to the property based on that factor. The other issue there is with regard to vacancy. I won't get into it a lot, but we have essentially a three-tier system. You have your first run full service auto dealership branded, whether it's Mazda or Ford, etc. When that becomes obsolete for various reasons, it typically descends to used auto dealership in some cases and or straight to development land. Now, typically, the in-between period can be very extensive, as you see on my page 14 and 15. I won't get into that in detail, but obviously the special use nature is an issue that should be addressed. So that's the background. Let's jump into the valuation itself. Page 16, I've already covered the two distinct portions of the property. Logically, when you look at it, we don't have a single entity building that is identical front to back. We have two distinct portions. You don't have, as most big box stores are, you don't have, call it 75, 80, 85 of the floor of the space, or rather the floor area, being devoted to sales floor with some minimal storage and warehousing at the back. You have front showroom retail, which is typically in the 30 to 40% range, and rear service and automotive service area, which is typically in that call it 60 to 70% range in terms of the floor area of the building. So that is a clear distinction that should be kept in mind. Let's look at the comps. So what I've done is present the automotive comps to start with, and then get into the retail ones. So page 17 is the automotive ones. We have a total of 17 here. They're not all going to be perfect in that they're located adjacent to an auto dealer struck in 2023 of the same size, etc. But what they do show is what the automotive service market does rent for in the market, typically in main retail locations. So I'll jump through this relatively quickly, but point out some important ones. I've also included some photos and maps of some of these. The first comparable, number 120 King Edward Street. This is Route 90, just to the west of Polo Park on Route 90. This is a Boyd Automotive Collision Center, 15,000 square feet in size, 2018 lease, running for 5 years, leased at $850. So that would renew around the valuation date, and what would probably be marginally higher than that from that initial rate. But that is the information running through the valuation date. Number 2, also on Route 90, similar size, just under 18,000 square feet, automotive repair, 2019 lease at $10.15 a square foot. Now, those are the largest comparables. They are purely automotive service and or collision. We can move down. As you can see, most of them are located on your Peminas, your Regents, your Portage Avenues, etc. So prominent locations. I will point out 3 others to start with, numbers 4 through 6. This is essentially a strip mall that is only automotive service. We have 3 different leases there: transmission, brake, and lube. Individual tenancies, 2018 and 2019 leases ranging from $8.10 a square foot through $12 a square foot for space in the 2,000 to 2,400 square foot range. So considerably smaller than what the service area of one of these facilities would be. So the economies of scale does need to be taken into account. However, those are located immediately adjacent essentially to the strip of automotive dealerships on Regent Avenue. So they're in very close proximity, and you can see what those individual units rented for. We can run down further. There's a number 13, 3680 Portage Avenue. This was an arm's length lease, 2017. It is a used auto sales for a period of 4 years. So it did expire prior to the valuation date. And indeed, things did change in that time frame as well. However, it did rent for $12.50 a square foot. 7,200 square feet. We also have 2 at the bottom there, 16 and 17, 2554 Portage. This was just under 23,000 square feet. This is the former Mercedes dealership location, not the Mercedes lease, but the Mercedes location. They moved out. It became Birchwood actually leased it as a used auto dealer / finance center. 2015 lease for 5 years at $7.50 a square foot. That is since expired, and the tenant did not stay on. In fact, I think they may have vacated slightly early there. And the final one, number 17, 1322 Waverly. This is also auto sales. This is the not auto location, premium used auto sales and leasing. It's located, excellent location in Southwest Winnipeg on the southeast corner of Waverly and McGilvery. You can see the interior as well as an exterior there. Leased in 2018 at a rent of $6.85 a square foot. The difference here, which I should point out, is that the tenant did have to pay for all of their improvements to the property. So that $6.85 is certainly on the low side in terms of what the rental rate would be if one were to lease the space as fully built out. So that is the automotive. If you look at the range there, you can see it typically falls in that 7 to 12 at the very upper end for considerably smaller spaces. So let's jump forward from there, as well as better locations than the subject property. Jumping forward to the showroom retail, page number 19. So what I've done is given you 24 comparables here. What we've tried to do is use comparables that are in locations that are more appropriate in order to, in being closer to automotive dealerships and or in locations that are more similar to where auto dealerships would be located, such as a peripheral area towards the end of Pembina, etc. We'll run through these again quickly. Page number 19. We can begin at the top here again. I'm not going to run through 24 of these, but I will point out a few important ones. Numbers 1 and 3 are located on Regent Avenue. They are located towards the far eastern end of that build-up retail area from Regent and La Jamodier, so much closer to where the auto dealers are located. The first one is Leon's Furniture, number 1, just over 26,000 square feet, $14 per square foot in a 2021 lease. So very recent in terms of the lease date. Number 3, 2020 lease, also large, 23,000+ square feet. This is the Staples in virtually the same location. Adjacent to it, 2020 lease, $10.25 per square foot. Now, number 4, also important, 1487 Regent Avenue. This is, as you are on Regent and you head east over the, you pass Costco, so you're essentially past all of that retail development. You go over the train tracks and you're now into the area where the auto dealers are developed. 1487, number 4 there is the brick leased with significant steps, leasing at $13.55 a square foot as of the valuation date, just under 40,000 square feet. Now that property is in very close proximity to the dealerships on Regent Avenue. So it's not adjacent to the ones we're talking about, but it is adjacent to automotive dealerships. 2 on West Portage. I will limit myself to just a couple more here. 3292 Portage and 3332 Portage, numbers 5 and 6. Again, significant in size, 20 and 28,000 square feet. Giant Tiger and Princess Auto. So big box stores. These leased in 2017 and 2019 for $13.50 and $11 per square foot. Steps were included in the Giant Tiger lease, that being from 2019. Now the city, I think, included these in their evidence as well. I have shown them on my page number 6, I believe. They are not on the former Unicity site, but they are towards the west end of Portage Avenue. And you can see the leases there that we're looking at, $13.50 and $11 a square foot. So I won't, as I mentioned, go through all of these. I will only mention 2 more, that being 22 and 23. These are located In a fully redeveloped property on Keniston. They are immediately adjacent to 3 brand new auto dealerships, 2 of them being built by Birchwood. The other one being Mercedes. That development there, we have 2016 leases for the 2 of those, relatively large in size, 10 and 15,000 square feet. At 12 and 12.50 per square foot over a 10-year term, so running through the valuation date. So as you can see from those locations, what we're trying to do is find comps that are more comparable, the same type of retail, but more comparable in terms of the location of where they're developed, which will of course provide you more of an indication of what a retailer would pay to locate in those types of locations. The photos and aerial maps are shown on the following pages for a number of those. You can see the type of property that we have selected and where they are located. So I'm happy to go through that in more detail if anyone requires it. Otherwise, I will skip forward now to page number 26. So looking at the ranges with regard to rental rates, automotive repair and collision, we're looking at a range of $6.50 to $13 per square foot, essentially. With regard to showroom retail, we're looking at that range of just under $8 a square foot to $14.25 per square foot. As we mentioned, we're looking at roughly 40% retail, 60% automotive service. Now, what we've done to assist the panel is provide an example of looking at the valuation of the property. So if we take automotive repair, call it 60% of a 100 square foot building, apply your rental rate and do the same for the showroom retail portion. As you can see, we put in some speculative rates there. 15 for showroom retail, 10 for automotive repair, reflecting the decent quality of our general developments. That gives you an overall rate of $12 per square foot. Now, we don't break, certainly for the border revision, we don't break these out down to the square foot like that. We're looking at the general overall rate that should be applied. So we've applied an overall rate of $12 per square foot to the subject property in terms of rental rate. So that gives you the potential annual income. We don't dispute the expenses. And this gives us our final ARV of $248,880. Summarized on my page 28. Again, we've included the board decision and our brief or the section of it in the addenda for you to review. Again, based on $12 a square foot. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Poole, questions?
Yeah, I just want to go through a few things here, just to make sure the board is guided in its mind eye, the difference of our approach. Generally speaking, though, before we get into that, we're dealing with business assessment appeal. We're relying on the same comps that we relied on for the realty, both parties. We're generally presented to the panel the same rents from your side and my side and the realty here today.
Identical.
So generally the same information. Touching base on the orders. We're relying on 2 orders. Again, I'm gonna go over it just so we're crystallize our positions. These 2 orders were not intended or written in a way that to be taken directive years down the road. Nor does it say use this as a directive.
It doesn't say that, but that has been the approach that the state.
Yeah, I'm going to stop both of you here with respect to the orders. I think we're clear on what the position is going to be with municipal board. I don't want to get into arguments about the approaches.
I'm not, but I do have to touch base on the difference of what, in my opinion, the agent is not following the order that he's relying on, and I do want to crystallize that.
Not relying on an order.
So in the order, that isn't the retail order that we are agreeing with, or I've reviewed and I agree with that position. You're relying on creating two separate CRUs within the subject property that only has one CRU. These subject properties can only be leased out to one entity, whether they're owner occupied. There is no,
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
there is only one, this is only a one CRU for the subject property and all of them today. There is no two separate distinct entrances to that exit and entrances that are fully demisable between. You couldn't have two tenancies within the property.
Certainly you could. There are
As-
numerous entrances and exits to both the front and the rear of the properties.
As it sits. There is not a wall, there is not a demising feature that completely separates the two buildings.
So certainly there is there, and
You
we're
can't
looking
walk
at
from one
nine
end of the building
different
to the other.
nine different properties here today, so I mean. Yes, there is typically a hard division between the front and the rear of the building. Our point is not that you have an individual operating business in the back. And an individual operating business in the front. The point is that that is the structure you're looking at that could be achieved. And certainly, if you want to look at it from that perspective, there are innumerable examples from the city of Winnipeg with regard to a single structure where there are multiple income streams and treated entirely separately by the city. So
But
this is virtually the same.
as it sits, it's one economic unit, business operating the entire site. There is no separation between the two, where two businesses can run independently from
What do
each
you
other.
mean by separation, I guess?
There-
And I don't want to get into.
Meaning, I'm a
argument.
tenant and you're a tenant, you can't get into my space and I can't get into yours, and we have separate and distinct areas of the site that we get to own, or we get to operate on, our independent business property.
That could certainly be achieved, and what we're looking at is the methodology, so as I had said, and I don't want to get into any extended argument here, but applying a single rate from a Safeway, essentially, which is what they're largely talking about back in the day, to an auto dealer is most definitely incorrect.
So moving on, just from that. The order that you're putting more weight on is essentially, at that point in time, the board thought that it was either a good rent, not a book rent, and they incorporated that into their argument.
No, that's incorrect. I'm not placing any reliance on either particular. I'm certainly not relying on the municipal board order, which was based on automotive dealership rents, some of which were book rents, some of which were not. That is not my position.
I
Nor
get
should it be construed as such.
So just so we're clear, that order indicated one economic unit. Now you've created a hybrid or a tangent off that order where we're now taking some retail and some vehicle related. And
If I can interrupt, please, rather than going down to this road, as I understand the position of Mr. Smith, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's using a blended rate based on the use and finish of the property. You are taking a unblended rate based on retail. That question is something that's going to have to be determined by the board.
and that's okay, I just wanted to crystallize that. The board, the order that he's mainly relying on never had a blended rate.
We're not going to consider the board order.
I don't want to get into this over and over again, but I am not relying on that board order. So if I most respectfully, please do not characterize me as relying on that order, because I'm not.
I know you created a different position from that order. This is what I'm trying to
I didn't
emphasize.
create it from that order.
So you have a new position not relying on that order.
Again, if we can move on from Thompson, as I understand it, we have to decide, the panel has to decide whether this is a blended rate based on use as presented by Mr. Smith and or the rate as presented by the model for a retail at the comps. And that is the determination that the panel will be making today.
Okay, I'll move on from that point. For the infrastructure costs, which again, I get it comes from that order, but for the infrastructure costs from the board revision for the 2025 cycle, they did not apply that. They applied 3%.
No, that's incorrect. They did apply the infrastructure costs. What they didn't, they agreed with the city on the 3% non-recoverable is what they, that's the only thing they changed from our valuation.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Getting into your comparables. your rent ranges for your comparables, they differ widely. They're not tight within, say, a dollar square foot over the 17 or so, you know, one versus the other. They're, when you summate them, they're actually quite a wide range. Would that not be an indication of the, quality of the comparables that you're using?
Well, as I said, not each of the comparables are perfect. I'm not agreeing with your point straight up. What I'm saying is the comparables that we've provided give you a broad overall perspective of what automotive service and collision center tenants are willing to pay for the individual properties they're in the marketplace. So certainly there is a range of rates, as is there in the comparables that the city provides based on power center node tenancies.
Would you consider the type of tenancies that you've had on either end of the comparables national or international strength covenants, or would you consider that lesser than the majority of them?
Some
Meaning your
of them
small
are,
service vehicle dealer or vehicle service end.
well, the information is there for the panel. Certainly some of them are your branded standard Mr. Lube's things of that nature, right? Which is shown there. Automotive service, as it's the information is there for the panel to review.
And given that the majority of their differences is that area, that lessening of comparable rental rate that you're using, would that not be essentially what would the panel have to make a decision on?
Which
Meaning you're putting a $15 rent on the showroom.
No, no, you're looking at the example that I provided for the panel to review. I'm not saying that is the number that we have utilized for each section. You're mischaracterizing it. What it is an example to provide the panel guidance in how to look at this. We provided an overall blended rate for the property as a whole.
Okay, so generally you've applied an overall blended rate from two types of difference economic commerce that occur on different sites to the subject property, as would be multi-tenanted site, which can't be accomplished as a coincidence.
Well, I don't want to get into that in greater detail, but certainly I disagree with your point that it can't be two, but what we're using is a blended rate. And as I've mentioned previously, and I think the panel is aware, if you look at any number of examples of City of Winnipeg assessment valuations, you will have multiple income streams for a single property where you have, say, retail on the main floor and or office with apartment above, etc. Treated entirely differently by the city, where they have an income stream based on apartment valuation, one based on retail valuation, one based on arcade valuation, etc., etc. This is not, we're not breaking new ground here. It's not revelatory. The city itself does it. It's standard practice. And certainly it is how the appraisal theory essentially guides us in how this type of property should be addressed in an environment where market leases are lacking.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, questions?
Well, I'm just looking at Mr. Smith's blended rate. So a typical blended rate would be $12.50 in this case, but you've elected to suggest that in all cases, automotive repair would be 60, showroom would be 40. So you've opted for a weighted average. Is that how I read this? $12 is a weighted average.
$12 would be a weighted average in that example that I supplied to you there, yes. And as you had mentioned, in other locations in the city, we had marginally higher rental rates to account for both the location as well as the infrastructure component of somewhat of this particular location.
Would you view this location as a prime automotive sale and service location, or a substandard medium? How would you characterize it?
Well, I'll give you a bit of background with regard to the location. So when the property was being developed by Birchwood, essentially, they needed a significant area of land in order to have the ability to develop multiple dealerships within an auto park themselves. So they looked at available locations, available land. They looked at prices, obviously. And they selected this location as it was relatively less expensive in terms of acquiring the land. So their overall development costs would be slightly lower. And it does have that location at the interchange there. So in some ways, getting there via perimeter highway, et cetera, is you know, it'll be easily known where it is and you can travel there. Now, balancing that, it is peripheral, very peripheral. It's out nearly outside the city of Winnipeg boundaries. It's outside the perimeter. I can tell you from my discussions with the ownership group and individual properties that we're dealing with here that they struggle with the location compared to other locations because of its peripheral location, in that they drive more business at other locations that are more within built up residential areas within the city than they do in this particular location. So same dealership in one location compared to the other will perform more superiorly in a more built up area. If you take your car out there for service and you're not located in St. James, you're driving a significant way to take it out there for service. They will then, of course, as all auto dealers do, provide you with a ride to your work or residence and then pick you up to take you back out there. But it's an inconvenience, certainly in comparison to more centrally located locations. So it's, yes, they built it for the reasons of having an auto park themselves, but it is not an ideal location in that sense. We're not in an American development scenario where you have cities growing together and this central location will drive greater business or anything. We're on the edge of Winnipeg and beyond that. Well, next you're looking at Eli, Portage la Prairie, right? There is no growth coming the other direction in order to encompass this within a built up area, if that answers your question, hopefully.
Yeah, somewhat. I think the only comparable would be the Waverly Automall. Would you agree with that? Like in terms of size, scope, number of offerings?
Yes, in terms of size, yes, but certainly more centrally located. That was essentially spare industrial land when it was developed, but as you can see where it is now, it is more central in terms of location with regard to the city development as a whole.
Yeah, so far, yes. Talk to me in 20 years.
In 20 years, we will talk again.
I gotta work.
I have no other questions.
Jeremy will be there too.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear all about it after that. Ms. Schultz, have you any questions?
No questions at this time, asked and answered already. Thank you.
Thank you.
My only question is with respect to the comparables that have expired. Those rents, and I'm looking at your page 17, numbers 10, 11, 13, and 16. Those leases have expired, but those businesses remain in those places, do they not? What are the new leases, or do you have access to those?
So I guess two-part answer. I'll look at each of them. So the Sanford, I don't have access to the new or renewed information if that tenant is, I believe they're still in place. So we would anticipate that that would go up somewhat from where it is. 231 Oak Point, this is the former Harley Davidson dealership, now an automotive, or rather a used car dealership. Yes, that would also go up from the $7 one I would anticipate, although it's. Yeah, and I don't have the renewed information there. 3680 Portage, I don't have the information on that one either. 2554 Portage, that tenant did not renew in that location. That's the former Mercedes location there.
That's part source now, is it not?
It is now, but what we're looking at here is a used auto lease by Birchwood of that location, which
Right.
heavily underperformed for them. But yes, 750,
Okay.
as I think I'd indicated, would be higher than that since that time frame.
And similarly, on page 19, there's a number that have as appears expired as of the reference date, numbers 9, 17, 19, and 20.
17, 19, 20,
Yeah,
okay.
McMunn and Yates at number 9 was a 3-year lease started in 2018, 772. So that was expired in 2021.
Right, so I don't have access to the new information, and again, we're not presenting it to mislead in any sense, not that you're suggesting I am, but we don't have that renewed information
Okay,
as of the reference date.
okay, fair enough. I think that is all of my questions.
Mr.
Keeping in
Chairman.
mind what I said earlier, and I'm mindful of the time. If you wish to make the summary now, that's acceptable, or we could leave the summary on all the properties till the end, because I assume that the summary is going to touch on a lot of the generalities that we've talked about today, or talked about for the first property. So I leave that to you, Mr. Pohl, or Mr. Smith.
New twist on it, I think a summary at the end of hearing all the.
That sounds fine,
That's acceptable.
yes.
Okay, then having heard the evidence, we will
Just leaves me with rebuttal, which will take me 3 minutes.
certainly, that rebuttal has not been shared, I don't think, Ms. Pacone, do we have that?
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
It's the same, just for information, it's the same one that you would have seen, but for the realty, but you can see it again, obviously. You can have my copy if you want. Sorry.
And you were distributing it,
Yeah.
Ms. Pacone?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure it'll draw by now.
I will, two questions, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we then have a ton of others that respond to this.
so what was that, Mr. Whitbread? Have you,
I said I'll have a couple of questions once the rebuttal is done.
Mr. Assessor, do you want your own? copy?
I've got the
You
rebuttal.
can just send it to me by.
Oh, okay, okay, sounds good.
It's on our SharePoint now.
yeah, I've got it now. Mr. Whitbread, do you have it now?
I'm looking, where did you lodge it?
It's just called applicant rebuttal.
Right under number 8, orders, details, business and conclusions.
Applicant, yeah, there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I have it now.
I believe I've seen this before as well, but
Yes, this is not new, is it?
No.
It's new
No.
today, but we've seen it from you before.
okay, then please proceed, Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I said, I'll be very efficient with this. We've all, at least 2 of the panel members have seen it before, I believe. Not sure if everybody has, but what I've done here for the rebuttal is just summarize the information that the city presented with regard to their big box comparables. So this is all 80 comparables broken up as the city has divided them. And what you're essentially looking at is the location of these and the tenancy that we're looking at. So by and large, we're looking at national and or international covenant retailers that are all for the most part, not exclusively, but for the most part located on power center nodes that are anchored by large anchors and or on shopping center sites that are also anchored. So page number, I guess it would be 1 This is 1 through 13. This is the Regent Lajimoje location. We're looking at Crossroads Station Shopping Center, Kildonan Place Shopping Center, Kildonan Crossing Shopping Center. You can see the location of each of those comps. I think we have one in common, which would be number 3, the Leons, and you can look at the lease rates of the others developed on out front of the major anchors and see the rents that they pay there. Obviously, that would be considerably different than where the auto dealers are located in that area. If you drive down Regent in the aerial that I've provided, go over the train tracks and down a little way, that is where the dealers are located. Is it within a 2-kilometer radius? Sure, but entirely different location than what the comparables presented by the city are. Moving on, second page, 14 to 26. This is the Polo Park area. They're all immediately adjacent to Polo Park on that St. James Strip and or on the site of Polo Park, with 2 exceptions to the north. So we've all been there. We know what the anchors are. I won't run through it further. Moving forward to page 3, you're looking at the south portion of Southwest Winnipeg, Grant Park Shopping Center. So you've got 5 or 6 located on site there. You're looking at the tenancies, as you can see: Save on Foods, Petland, Dollarama, Toys R Us, Dollar Tree. I didn't run through the other ones, but they're there for you to see. You can see the quality of the covenant of those particular tenants. Covenant Crossing being the other development, and then some ones that are a little bit further spread out. Jumping forward, Keniston McGilvery, this is informative. You can see the great, nearly all of these are in that Keniston and McGilvery interchange. The ones that aren't are immediately adjacent to IKEA there in the IKEA Seasons location, and then the brand new development in a high income area in Southwest Winnipeg that numbers 55 and 54 in Bridgewater Town Center. Now, on that aerial, if you again drive north on Keniston, you cross over the train tracks, go up a little ways to the first light at intersection, which goes on both sides of the roadway. That is where the 3 new dealerships are located. Definitely not on these sites, and down the way, obviously, they are different. They're adjacent to other industrial, and the comps that I provided there are shown for you as well. I won't run through the rest. Page 5, you're looking at Garden City location again on anchored sites, or Garden City Shopping Center, same thing. And finally, the last page 6, former Unicity development. You're looking at Sobeys Winners, Value Village, Staples, Shoppers Drug Mart, Sport Check, and then we have 2, one of which that we have in common, that being the Princess Auto at Westwood Center, which is more comparable as it's not on a site that is anchored in the same fashion as those. So the point of this is this narrow look at big box center retail on power center nodes is obviously going to drive higher rental rates than it would in comparable locations to the automotive dealerships. That is my rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Paul, questions?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. It's exactly everything that I've been indicating. This panel has a better indication of evidence for them to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, questions?
Not on this particular point, no, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
And I have no questions.
Thank you.
Then we will now conclude this matter. And as I said, there will save summary until the end, given the similarity of all the positions. But given that it's 10 to 11 now, I'm going to suggest we take 5 minutes and take a short break. It's 10:50. We can be back here at 10:55, please, for the next property. And I would thank you. We're live again, and we'll call this meeting back to order and move on to number 2 on the list. That is street address of 3965 Portage Avenue. The comments that I made earlier with respect to applying the evidence from the first matter to all the matters, of course, will carry on to this matter. Mr. Pohl, can you introduce the property, please?
File number is 244985. The address is 20 unit 20 3965 Portage. The business identification number is 5063. Sorry. Bear with me. That's too small. There we go. 5069-3. The total ARV is 148,500. The total area of the premise is 9,111 or 9,113 square feet, and the total ARV is for $16.30. Below is a breakout of how we get to that. The documents cost applied to a base rent of $13.80. The order for the realty is attached below. I will not get into it, other than it's the exact same order that you see through this docket that we're dealing with, that the evidence that the order was issued based on the applicant's evidence with a 3% non-recoverable allowance. Cover page is for the realty. Below that, photos of the subject property are on the page below that. See, it's a full service car dealership, or it was a full service car dealership. I believe this is a detailing entity now. The rent that was applied was $13.80. Same rent that's applied for the realty, and the comps that we've already discussed at length are the same ones between 70 and 80 that I'm relying on. We do have the citywide look, but we're relying on comp 73 to 80. So with that, I feel it should be confirmed and no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, questions?
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Mr. Smith, please, your evidence.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mr. Cole mentioned, we're dealing with identical information with regard to the rental rate being the same rental rate used by the city from their model in the realty appeal 1380. It's the same rental rate used for the ARV here. The subject property was heard for realty as mentioned, and it was decided based on the appellant's evidence, our evidence that is included in the addenda with the board order based upon the rental rate as shown on my very last page, which is $12 per square foot. And just with regard to the property itself, so it is actually a used auto dealer that it is being utilized as now, Virtual Credit Solutions. So they finance sales of used auto dealers on site. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pohl, questions?
I don't have any questions.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
Sorry, no questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
And I have no questions. And given my comments earlier about summarizing at the end, we will, having heard the evidence, we will conclude this matter and move on to number 3 on the list. Number 3 is the unit 40 at 3965 Portage Avenue. Mr. Pohl, if you could please.
My apologies, just wanted to confirm with the applicant if he wants the rebuttal applied to all the items on the docket.
Yes, sorry, it is meant to apply to all renewals labeled on, I think, the cover page for each file number.
Yes, I will note that.
Thank you. I should have addressed that. Mr. Pohl, number 3, please.
File number 244986. It's for, again, unit 40 3965 Portage. Approach from Chevrolet. We have a total annual rental value of $431,700. The total area of the premise is 29,060 square feet, and the overall ARV is $14.86 a square foot. Below that, we see the occupancy costs applied to a base rent again of $12.35, which gives you your total annual rental value It is owner occupied again. We'll get into the order as we see the order is below. On below that is the cover page for the realty brief that we produced. On page 4 of that brief, you don't know what it is on your image. For yours, we see that it is a full service dealership. And on the next page, we see that it is the $12.35 that we applied. Same group of comparables that we're using, 73 to 80, so I won't get into that. We see a weighted average of about a little over $17 a square foot. So with that, I do think that the $12.35 that's applied to it is under market, but I'm not asking for an increase or anything like that today, but I think it's quite defendable. So with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, questions?
I have none, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
I do with respect to the variation in the base ARV here. This is a model rent of 1235? Okay, and it's 29,000 square feet.
29,000 square feet, yes. Bigger area.
Okay, thank you. That is the only question that I had. Mr. Smith, your evidence, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So unit 40, this is the Chevrolet dealership at the auto park. As already mentioned, the city's modeled rent of $12.35 is the same as the rent they used in the realty. All the comparables are the same on both sides for ourselves as well as the city, so the information is identical. Property was built in 2000 with an addition in 2013. We're looking at a total area of 29,060 square feet. Small mezzanine area of 960 square feet. For the subject property, photos begin on page 4. You can see the exteriors, then we move into the auto showroom on page number 5. You can see it is typically a little older than a brand new one. Then we have, for some reason, we have the parts area and client service area, but not a photo of the rear service area. Suffice it to say, it looks like all of the other vehicle service areas that you'll see today. Not any different. Our valuation remains the same as it was in the realty based on the same comparables. This is shown on my page 25. We use the $12 per square foot rental rate for the potential annual income. And we're not disputing the cost to occupy on page 26, and the summarized ARV is shown on page 27, coming to $421,550. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pohl, do you have any questions? Ms. Schultz, have you any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Having heard the evidence on this matter, we will conclude it and move on to number 4 on the list. That, I believe, is unit 45, Mr. Pohl.
Bear with me, I need to pull that one up or we'll be fairly quick. Unit 45, file number is 244987. We had 4539, unit 45 3965 storage, and business ID number is 30932. So this is Birchwood BMW. You look at the annual rental value, it is 386,580. The total area is 25,025 square feet. And the overall ARV is $15.45 a square foot. Again, the occupancy costs are a touch below that with a base rent of $12.99. The board revision order is there for your reference below the next page down. And again, the realty brief excerpts from the realty brief that I produced. Cover page is on there. On page 4 of that brief, we see the dealership itself, again, full service dealership. And on page 27 of that brief, it was $12.99. So the same rents that were applied today, and again, same comparables that we used, comparable 73 through 80. So again, at a $17 rent, we have a approximately 13 or a $17 market rent, which was observed by myself and drive by myself. We have it approximately $13 base rent. Fine, so with that, we think it's dependable. Is that?
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thanks.
And nor do I. So, Mr. Smith, your evidence, please, on this property.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So unit 45 at the auto park is the Mini / BMW dealership. Page number 3 gives you a quick background. Built in 2000 with the addition done in 2015. Just over 25,000 square feet, as already mentioned. All of the remainder, obviously, of our information that we discussed earlier is the same with regard to uses in the auto park, zoning, et cetera, et cetera. The photos begin on page 4, a couple of the exterior, then we get into the showroom on page 5. And on to page 6 with a lounge and further showroom on the other side of the building. And then into the vehicle service area for the facility on page 7. And on to page 8. But looks like it's, no, I guess it is different. Anyway, there's the photos. Description of the build out is on page 9. We can skip forward to the valuation. Obviously, as already mentioned, all of the information for both the city and ourselves remains the same as far as the modeled rent, their comps, our comps, and the rent that we have applied is the same as in the realty that we applied. So the $12 per square foot, as shown on my page 27, applied to the area, gives you your potential annual income. We're not disputing the cost to occupy, and page 29 summarizes the total ARV at $361,775 is the figure I have. The addenda includes the income and expense, the realty decision showing it was based on our evidence, and then we have the evidence following that indicating the $12 rate. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Pohl?
I don't.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have done, thanks.
Ms. Schultz?
Sorry, no questions.
I have a question with respect to this property vis-a-vis the other properties, and generally speaking. We've heard about economies of scale being used to determine rental amounts, economies of scale such that a larger property, larger premises may attract lesser rent per square foot. You use the same $12 per square foot regardless of the size. Are economies of scale not forming part of the calculation here, Mr. Smith, or is it just geographical, or is there, can you explain that?
Certainly, yeah. So we do take all of those factors into account, and my comments with regard to economies of scale are relevant, yes, in that if you have a larger, in most cases, if you have a larger unit, the rental rate that a tenant would be willing to pay on that compared to a similar property that was smaller, somewhat smaller, would be lower for the larger property, greater for the smaller one. The difference, and it is a critical difference, and I didn't address this because we cover so much ground in these hearings, but if we look at the small properties that we're dealing with here, unit 10 and unit 20, particularly unit 20 that we just covered, which was just over 9,000 square feet. That's unit 20 was a former Saturn dealership. Saturn went dark, and Birchwood owning that that unit and the whole auto park essentially could not interest a major automotive manufacturer, major brand in locating in that unit because it didn't fit their needs, because it was too small. So already obsolete for the mainline branded first run auto dealers, right? Nobody would locate in it, just too small for the marketplace. So they were forced to make other use of that property. So it has been various things. It was Birchwood Truck Center for a while, where they only sold trucks of various brands, but focused on trucks. And it has since evolved to it was Birchwood Finance is the tenant on record. It's a used auto dealer now, where you buy your car from them and they finance it, right? These are all secondary uses of these types of properties. So clearly that unit, and I would argue number 10, have descended down that ranking that I described ever so briefly in my presentation, where you have first run auto dealers, then they become obsolete for the marketplace, can sometimes become used auto dealers, and then when they're obsolete for that purpose, they become a development site with generally breaks in between each of those stages. So it's not in this case that unit 20 and unit 10 should be getting more rent. It's simply that they're smaller, but in normal circumstances for a normal type of retail on a normal location, yes, economies of scale do play into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my only question. Having heard the evidence, we will conclude that matter and move on to number 5 on the list. That is unit 50 at 3965 Portage Avenue, Mr. Paul.
File number 244988. Unit 50, 3965 Portage. Business ID number, roll number is 30933. Total annual rental value, or ARV, is $411,180. The total area is 27,114 square feet. And the overall ARV is $15. Below again are the occupancy costs attached to the base rent of $12.52. Same scenarios what we discussed already. Next page is the realty decision for this cycle. Page after that is the excerpts from the realty brief. On page 4 of that brief, we see the subject property. And then the page below that, we see a $12.52 attached to that. Same comparables that we're using is 73 through 80, which is at around a $17 weighted average. We see that coming back to what the model produced, it was a $12.52 overall base rent. So with that, I do think it's defendable. It's under the market, but again, we're not asking for an increase for additional, but the market isn't the market produced.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have none, thanks.
And I don't have any. Mr. Smith, please, your evidence in this property.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So unit 50 is the Nissan Infiniti dealership at the auto park. As already mentioned, all the evidence remains the same. The city's modeled rental rate is the same as it was for realty. And our modeled, or rather our rent is identical to what we used in the realty as well. All of the comps are the same. Bit of background, page 3, this particular unit was originally constructed in 2001. It has had an addition since that time. See the 2025 realty decision there. All of the other discussion we've already covered. The photos begin on page 4, one exterior, and then we get into the showroom area on page 4 for one of the sections. Client service area, top of page 5, more, I believe that's a finance station at the bottom of page 5. And we get into service at the back, page 6, a photo of another portion of the exterior, page 6 as well. Showroom, customer area on page 7 and 8. Description of the property on page 9. The remainder of the information does remain the same as already mentioned, and for the reasons indicated, we have applied that same $12 rental rate as shown on my page 27 to the whole area of the building. Again, not disputing the expenses as shown on page 28, and our final ARV rounded on page 29, $396,900. The ARV comes to the income expense is included in the addenda, as well as the realty decision and our page indicating the realty valuation. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Cole? No. Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have none, thanks.
Ms. Schultz?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. So having heard the evidence, we will conclude that matter and move on to number 6 on the list. That is the unit 70 at the Richwood Auto Mall.
File number 244990. Address is again unit 70 3965 Portage. Business assessment ID number or roll number is 50698. It is the Birchwood Lexus Toyota dealership. Excuse me. The total annual rental value or ARV is $493,500. The total area of the premise is, or the building is 32,903 square feet, and overall ARV is $15. We see the occupancy costs below that attached to a $12.50 rent. Same ideas of the prior appeals. The next page over is the realty decision from this cycle. Page down from that, we see the subject property, pictures of it. And then below that is the same $12.50 rent that was applied in the realty, as well as just comparable 73 to 80, which should apply, which gives us the $17, approximately $17 weighted average for the market for the area. And we see that that is at $12.50. It's quite a bit under what the market is. So with that, again, it is dependable.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have nothing, thanks.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Please, your evidence, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So the property we're dealing with is the Toyota dealership at the auto park, just Toyota. Cover page gives you an exterior of the property, and page number 3 gives you again a bit of background. Built in 2004. You can see all the background there. 2025 realty reduction as indicated, and get into the photos, page 4, some of the exteriors, some of the showroom on page 5, and then some service at the bottom of page number 6. Again, this property falls in line with the typical division of these type of dealerships. As I've already mentioned, all of our information remains the same, as does the city's. We have applied the $12 rental rate to the leasable area as shown on page number 26. It should read 32,903 square feet rather than 394,000 square feet. My apologies for that clerical error. The potential annual income is obviously correct. We're not disputing the expenses as shown on page 27, and our summarized final rounded ARV is shown on page 28. Adding the two together, $477,075 is the rounded ARV. Income expense in the addenda, as well as the realty decision, as well as our valuation that was based on. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Paul? Ms. Schultz, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have nothing, thanks.
And I don't have any questions. Then having heard the evidence, we will conclude this matter and move on to number 7 on the list. And that is unit 75 at 3965 Portage. Mr. Paul?
File number 244991. Roll number is, address number is unit 75 3965 Portage Avenue. Business assessment ID number or roll number is 50699. This is the Birchwood Honda West. The total annual rental value or ARV is $363,840. $363,840. Annual, the total area of the premise is 24,159 square feet, and the total ARV is $15.06. So occupancy costs are below, with a $12.57 base rent attached to it. Again, next page down is the board revision order for this realty decision for this cycle. Page down from that is the cover page for the brief which I produced, and a couple pages down from that is the whole of the subject property and a full service dealership. Well, that is the same rent that is applied here today, $12.57. And again, we're using the same comparable 73 to 80 for approximately $17 weighted average rent for the retail area of marketplace there. So again, based on that, I feel that the $12.57 is below market, but again, dependable.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Smith, your evidence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as mentioned, this is the Honda dealership at the Birchwood Auto Park. As already mentioned, the realty was decided based on our valuation, which was based on $12 per square foot. That information is in the city's report as well as an addenda. And a bit of background for you on page 3, property was built in 1999 with an addition put on in 2009. Relatively small site at 2.4 acres. And we have a total leasable area of 24,159 square feet. The photos are on page 4. Again, a couple of the exteriors. Pardon me. Then we move into the showroom area. See, it is a little older than some of the other ones. And then we get into the service area at the back of the property on page number 6. Our valuation is based on the same comps, same methodology as before. And we have applied the same $12 rental rates to the subject property as shown on page 26. Giving you a potential annual income of 289,908 square feet, applying $12 to the whole leasable area. The expenses are not in dispute as shown on page 27. And our rounded summarized ARV is shown on page 28, $350,055. Income and expense, realty decision, and our realty valuation in the addenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Paul? Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. The evidence, then we will conclude this matter and move on to number 8 on the list. That being unit 90 at 3965 Portage Avenue. Mr. Paul.
File number is 245107. The address is unit 90, 3965 Portage Avenue. Business assessment ID number or roll number is 5695. And this is the Birchwood Chrysler Dodge G Brown dealership. So the total annual rental value or ARV is $580,520. The total area of the premise is 33,959 square feet, and the overall ARV is $15.27. We have the occupancy cost below was highlighted. And that's attached to a $12.70 base ARV or base rent, I should say. The page below is the board or revision order for the realty decision for the cycle. Page below that is the cover page from the brief I used. As we see on page 24, we see the subject property. Caveat here on this one is, although a lot of them here have had some additions put onto them. If you look here, this property had a bit of an addition put onto the east side showroom, as well as an addition put on to the west side as far as the service bay area. So there is a bit of a increase there. So we go down the page to the next page. We have the $12.70 rent attached to it. Again, same comparables do apply from 73 to 80. And with that, the weighted average is about $17, and we're again at $12.70. So again, I feel like it's dependable and a bit under market. But I don't open questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Schultz, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Smith, please, your evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealership at the Auto Mall, Unit 90. As already mentioned, the city's rental rate used for ARV is the same as used for their realty. All of their comps are the same, all 80 of them as already covered. And our information remains the same as well. A bit of background on page number 3. Property was originally built in 1999 with the addition referred to in 2016. We're looking at just under 34,000 square feet, 33,959 square feet of leasable area. Now, there is considerable amount of mezzanine space that is included in that overall leasable area. Photos begin on page 4, a couple of the exteriors. We move into showroom area on page number 5. Some of the main floor office area on page number 6, as well as customer waiting area. And some of the mezzanine office shown on page number 8 on the top of page 9. So that's what we're looking at. And obviously the bottom of page 9 is your service area. So clear distinction between the two portions of the property. Our valuation remains the same as it was for the realty. Again, we are using the $12 square foot rental rate as we've already described. It's shown on page 26, gives us our potential annual income of $407,508. The expenses aren't disputed, and our rounded ARV shown on page 28 comes to $494,760. Again, the decision for this particular unit is included in the addenda, as well as our valuation that it was based on. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Pohl? Mr. Whitbread?
None, thanks.
Ms. Schultz?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions, so we will conclude this matter and move on to the last matter on the docket today. That's number 9, Unit 100. Mr. Pohl.
File number is 244992. The address is Unit 139 by Portage. Business assessment ID number or roll number is 50696. Is the Birchwood Kia West dealership. The total annual rental value is $449,100. Total area of the premise is 30,144 square feet, and the overall ARV is $14.09. Attached to the occupancy costs listed below is a $12.36 base rent. On the page below that is the board order from, again, the 2025 cycle for the subject property. Cover pages on below that. Subject property photos are shown is the furthest west, I guess you would say. It's a little bit further than the other one, but generally it's on the farthest west side within the condominium development. On page 27 of that brief, the realty brief, we had the same rent that we had discussed for the, as well as the rents that we have applied for this hearing today on variable 73 through 80, which produce about a $17 weighted average rent. So when we review at a $12.36 rent for this ARV, I do think it's a little under market, but again, more than defendable.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have done, thanks.
Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Smith, your evidence, please.
Thank you. So unit 100, we are dealing with the Kia dealership in the auto park. Again, background shown on page number 3. This was originally built in 1999, 2000. We have a total of just over 30,000 square feet in leasable area. And again, all the other discussion that we had for the first property carries forward to this property. We won't cover that again, but please keep that in mind. The photos begin on page 4, exteriors. Then we move into the showroom area. You can see the mezzanine office space, some of the finance offices. And then we have service as shown on page number 6 at the rear of the property. And jumping forward, again, all the information remains the same on both the city presentation as well as our presentation. Our valuation remains the same as it was for the realty decision, as well as the report presented. We use the same $12 rental rate as shown on my page 27. And again, expenses are not in dispute, and the final rounded ARV comes to $437,910. The income and expense, owner occupied again, obviously. As well as the realty decision and our report on which it was based are included in the agenda. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Paul, questions? Ms. Schultz, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
None, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. And before we conclude this matter and all of the matters, I had promised an opportunity to summarize. Mr. Paul, your summary, please.
Generally speaking, I just want to go over things as I see it. The marketplace for car dealerships is completely owner occupied. There are no rents to pull from. There's only 2 ways to develop value, what we would value from a realty perspective, and of course you can take the rent from that for B perspective, is to value what the ongoing concern, or the going concern is the car dealership itself, what they're generating sales on site, determine what their net operating income is for their dealership, and the percentage of that for the cost, fixed cost would be to rent if you were going to rent from that dealership. Given that they're owner occupied, then next up, the next way to value is go into the marketplace and see what would be a similar type property to use economic substitution to bring that rent to place at the subject property. That's what we're doing here today. That's what the college is also doing here today, what we're doing in a different ways. We are not valuing what a car dealership would necessarily, as a going concern, occupy that site. There's some discussions in this mall where there's a few small ones that can't get a dealership. They're too small, they don't meet the criteria anymore for a full service dealership. I want to be very specific. We're looking at it from a retail perspective of a normal retail occupant, and taking that marketplace, putting it back in. We're not looking at it from the desirability, whether it be from a car dealership or full service dealership, as far as generating volumes on site, what the profitability would be and what they would pay for rent. We can't do that. Neither one of us can do that. So there's been a lot of discussion today where car sales are down, it's not as good. I want to kind of put a full stop to that in my mind's aspect, because we can't do that. If we are going to consider that, I would think the board would maybe put it into its mind's eye. The best litmus test that I can tell is everything that we see in the marketplace is bigger, better built for car dealerships. A good example of that is along the Kenniston stretch where you have Mercedes, new dealerships of Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, Jaguar, Land Rover, Lexus, all located within a small area, all on Kenniston. If you're struggling to sell cars and service cars, you wouldn't be building these high-end luxury dealerships along that stretch. Because if you can sell them and you have no problem selling Ford, Chevys and Dodges. So you see a vibrant and good growth in higher end luxury vehicles. The supporting Chevys and Dodges, so-called domestic vehicles, should have no barrier to that, to volume of sales. It's a good way of looking at it, from my perspective. But stepping off of that, we're not looking at it what a dealership would be profitable on a site. We're looking at it simply, what would the property owners of these subject properties going into the marketplace look for a similar location in a retail area in a mall or near a mall, which is exactly how the board order reads from the one we're relying on, and look for the rent that they would be paying there from national or international type tenancies, not your mom and pop operations, your small time retail. We're looking at what strong covenants would be. And those are the rents that I brought you in citywide, probably 80 comparables. I differentiated them between 6 geographical areas in the city, because that's where the six areas of car dealerships occur in, car sales occur in. So from that aspect, from this subject property, we're looking at the end of Portage, west end of Portage, and those are the bracket of comps that I've looked at bring to these subject properties. So if any one of these dealerships would move out and go into the nearest locale, around $17 rent is what they would be paying. From what our model is, at around $12 to $13 and around there. I think that is very reasonable. I think it's modeled under market, model shot a little on this one. But having said that, I think it's quite dependable. So at this point, I think the panel really needs to make a determination on what pool of property type class are you gonna decide to value these properties on? Are you gonna value them on ours as one CRU, one operating economic ongoing concern on the site, or are you going to use the appellant, or they seem to have some similarity between the showroom, which is around $15 or so, not far off of the 17 I have for this area, but then create a second CRU in a site that isn't and can't and isn't developed or currently developed in any of them for 2 independent entities to work or operate businesses out of, and then put a lower end rent on the vehicle service component of it. So that I don't think is appropriate. And that's really where I see the argument here today. That's where you're gonna have to make a decision on. So that's.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your summary, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll clarify a few things as well as present my summary. So we're not dealing with a going concern approach here. That's not how these properties are valued. It's not how any of the commercial properties are valued. We're not valuing the business and what they might potentially generate. There's any number of variables that go into that would change what rental rate might be appropriate to be paid for different types of retailers. That's really not an option and not on the table. What we're valuing is the real estate and what would be paid for it on the market. And to do that, you need to look at the structure, the location, and the market, right? What is that structure? What are the components of it in this case? And what would a market participant potentially pay for those 2 components of the property? Now, when you look at these, we've gone through 9 of them here today. It's very clear that there's a distinction between the front of house and back of house for these buildings. You have retail showroom and you have vehicle service at the back. We're not talking about separate CRUs and whether it's legally separated and so on and so forth. We're talking about 2 distinct portions of the building and what they're utilized for. Now, what do the market participants pay for similarly located properties in the Winnipeg marketplace. That is the approach that needs to be looked at. And we have, again, two distinct portions. There is no regulation or limit on methodology that one has to look at. A single entity type of retail such as big box alone to apply to a property like this. As I mentioned before, the city has any number of properties that they value with separate income streams in the city, be it apartment with main floor commercial or any other type of property like that. This is not different. We're not getting into the distinction of whether they have a, separated, fully separated and legally separated CRUs. That's not the issue at hand at all. We're looking at what would be paid for on the market for each of those components. Now, it only makes sense when you look at the structure and the operation and what they're put to use for to look at it in that fashion. A Sobeys is not going to move wholesale into an automobile dealership, nor is a Sport Check or any of these other national brands. Building doesn't fit, it's not in the locations they want for the reasons that I've already discussed in our presentation, which I won't cover again. They would never locate there, but what's informative is looking at what they pay for their properties that they're located in, where they're located in relation to both big box center, power center nodes built on anchored centers and or shopping centers in relation to where the comps we have provided are what they pay in relation to where the automobile dealers are. There's a very distinct difference between what a national branded tenant will pay on a major site such as the ones that the city has presented versus what they would pay 400 meters down the road. The measurement doesn't matter. It's, are you on the site of the development or are you not on the site of the development? They're going to pay considerably less to be located in areas that are more comparable to the subject properties as we have shown in the evidence we've provided. And again, the automotive service, yes, the comps are going to be in on retail strip, or rather retail corridors, as shown in our evidence, and that is the most comparable evidence there is for that portion of the building, and that is what needs to be looked at in valuing these. We don't have a set methodology that everybody agrees to. I think it's very clear that utilizing a single big box entity, applying it to the entire property is not appropriate, because that's not what the property is used for. It's not what it's built out for. It's not what it would generate if theoretically it were rented for that. So the distinction between the city's position and ours is very clear. I think the rebuttal evidence actually very clearly summarizes where that gap is. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And having heard all of the matters, we will adjourn this hearing. Thank you very much for your cooperation in moving this along after the discussion and fulsome recitation of evidence. Mr. Smith, Mr. Cole, have a good rest of the day. You'll get our decision shortly.
Thank you for your patience.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.